My name is Jacqueline. Excuse the state of the way I look. I'm just getting over being sick. Um, but yeah, so just to kind of get into my story this week that I've kind of been reflecting on, it's definitely had a lot to do with my future career in teaching, but I've really had a lot of time this week to kind of think about it because I also got to see the person who I'm going to kind of discuss for the first time in a long time, and it was really nice, and it just like happened to happen, and I was having a really shitty day, and they came in, and I was like, hey. But I'm going to be talking about the person who made me want to become a teacher. So my grandmother, my mom's mom, was a teacher. My mom was a teacher. So I always kind of vowed that I would step out of the box and not become a teacher. Not because I didn't think I could do it, but because I just didn't want to do the same thing my mom did and then the same thing my grandmother did. I wanted to break that sort of educational cycle. But deep down, I always knew that kids were definitely like my passion. I always wanted to become something that had to do with helping people and working with people, but obviously children were priority one for me because little humans are awesome. And they have so much to teach you, and you can learn so much. But anyways, that's a beautiful rant for another day about how much little humans are going to rule the world if you let them. But I wanted to become a veterinarian when I was younger because I was like, well, I love animals, so it's perfect. But because my mom, who was very, very meticulous and always thinks 20 steps ahead, was obviously very on top of me for my education and things like that because of obviously her mom doing the same thing to her. She was always like, okay, well, you need to be able to do this. You need to get these kind of grades. You need to do this. And because I'm the oldest sibling, I always kind of got the brunt of like, you need to be able to do all of this stuff so we don't have to worry about you, even though I was never really the problem child that they like knew about. And I had a really tough time with the pressure of all of that because it was consistent. And even my mom has no shame in telling you, like, she was very, very pressuring as a parent, and she didn't let up with really anything with me and was very on top of me for stuff. And in some cases, her and I butted heads lots because we are so similar and we are both very dominant personalities. And it got to a point where when I got to high school, I was like, I do want to become a teacher, and I knew deep down I really did want to become a teacher, but I couldn't prove her right, and I was at a point in our relationship where I was over trying to convince her otherwise. We weren't friends. I didn't like that she parented me. I was not a happy camper at all. And obviously the rebellious teen years don't help with that, clearly. But when I got to grade 9, because I'm French, I had a French drama teacher. But I went to St. Pete's Catholic High School in Peterborough. And the French drama teacher, she was lovely, don't get me wrong, she was great. And I always knew I was like a theater kid. I've performed since I was little. I love theater, but I especially love singing, right? So that was a big course for me that I was like, oh, I get to take this mandatorily? Perfect, because you need an arts credit in grade 9. So I was like, perfect. I didn't love it because she didn't teach it in a way that, as someone who speaks her language, and a lot of other students obviously did not, that was not their first language, which is fine, but as someone who speaks her language and also understands the potential that dramatic arts could have for any student, just like getting you out of your shell, helping you speak in front of people, helping you get comfortable with your peers, helping you meet people you would have never met before, and giving you a safe space to be able to create, conduct, and be yourself and be inclusive, right? And I didn't really feel like she was doing that. So I kind of was like, oh, I don't want to do drama again. And then my mom was like, well, next year you can do it with her university roommate, Paul Croak. And as soon as I walked into this man's class, I kid you not, he looks at me because he knew my mom, and he gives me this big hug, and he goes, you and I are going to do great things. And not to say he was pointing me out versus everyone else, because he was lovely with everyone else. And he was always, this is one thing about him. He was that teacher in a school that you could have never taken his class, and he would know your name and know something about you to talk to you about in the hallways when you walked by. Like, he was that teacher that kids who have never and would have never taken his class in any way, shape, or form would be able to come to him no matter what and be able to have a conversation with him because they actually feel like they have a teacher there that has their back. He made you feel seen, no matter if you were in walking through his halls or you just happened to pass him at some point in the day. He always acknowledged you for you, asked you how you wanted your name to be said, what your nicknames are, what's something about you that you love that you can continue to talk about together throughout the 4 years that you'd be in high school. He wanted you to always feel like you had value and you felt appreciated, where at a time in my life, not to say it was all because of my mother, but just overall in general, because of some very messed up personal traumas that had happened to me within those years of high school, he was always the first person to go, "What's going on?" and ask how your day was, but also genuinely mean it, not in like the Canadian form of "How are you?" "Oh, good, how are you?" He was always so good at being able to let people feel seen, and also sometimes not saying a word and just letting you go, like letting you talk, letting you go on a tangent, letting you perform in a way that you want to perform, letting you sing in a way that you want to sing. Like, I was the lead in both his musicals that he did, and I couldn't have been happier. I will say though, because he knew my situation with my mom, especially during the second musical when I was Ariel in The Little Mermaid, and I get really upset with my dad because he's like, taking me away from a boy. He was like, channel your mom. And I was like, okay, that's a little too far, because you know that. No one else knows that. You know that. But he's like, no, I'm going to push you until you resist. Like, I'm going to push you to your breaking point because I know you can do it. And like, he actually seeked out people, especially who had a tough time connecting to the role they were playing, connecting to the world around them, and just isolating themselves. He was always the first person to be able to grab you, take you out of that shell, yank you out if you really had to, and go, no, but you're worth a discussion. You're worth being a part of this class. You're worth walking these hallways. You're worth it. In any sense of the word, you are worth it. And he was so good at that. And I never told him enough. And I remember the night the show ended, the last show ended, we went back to the school and we all kind of did speeches, and I said pretty much what I'm saying now, except bawling, obviously. But that man, through all 4 years of school, even though the first semester I had a French drama teacher, I met him first semester. He asked me to be in his musical first semester. I wasn't in his class. He goes, I know you, and knowing your mom and her vocal potential, just try out for fun. And I said, I'm not, I like to perform, but I'm not like a theater kid. I'm a vocal performer. I'm not a theater kid. And he goes, we'll see about that. And our relationship grew from there. And I do consider him very much a friend, as well as like kind of an uncle. I very, very much consider him a friend, and he is the sort of person that even now to this day, like, we'll text each other out of the blue, or I'll see him when I'm at work because he lives in Ennismore. And like I said, this past week he came in, so it was really nice to be able to see him, and he has this sort of energy that kind of just resonates with calm, like everything's going to be okay. And I've obviously been having a very crappy week, so that was really, really nice to see. And yeah, when I took his course for the first time in 10th grade, I actually got to see not just what he was like as a theater director or in the hallways or just as a family friend. I got to see him as a teacher. And seeing him as a teacher, he was the sort of teacher that would ask you every day, so how are we doing? What are some wins this week? What are some things that were not such losses, but they were not the best things to happen to us in a week? And the amount of people that would just automatically want to share because they knew that the moment you walked into that class, one, there was no phones, which I loved, and two, it was a safe and inclusive environment where anything that was said with the context of, I don't want this to be repeated, wasn't. Didn't matter if you were friends, enemies, sitting in the same class, if you were part of different social groups, all of that. Everyone knew for him that that was of the utmost respect that you should give to the classroom as well as him. Whatever that someone doesn't want to be shared will not be shared outside of that class. A lot like this class, which is also part of what reminds me a lot of your class, because it's a very safe space, but it's also one of those things where I don't have to know anybody to know that the moment you say you don't want something shared, it's not. And it's a mutual respect, right? And his class very much had that. Excuse me. And he actually cared. He wanted to know what your wins were. He wasn't just like, so how is everyone? It was, tell me more. And then he'd remember it for years and years and years. So the more you took his class, the more he knew you and the more you knew him. And that relationship would only grow. It never stayed static, which is also phenomenal because he was so professional, but also any student entering his class he gave a shit. He knew that they were of value and they knew that they were of value because of him, right? If not for anything else, right? So I knew in grade 10, I was like, you know what? Screw it. Like, I know what my calling has and always will be. It's to work with kids. I knew that from the get-go, and I just didn't want to be right. And I remember the day I came home and I told my mom, and I was like, I want to be a teacher. She goes, I know. And I was like, really? She goes, because she had come in to speak to Paul Croak because they're friends, right? And she used to be the superintendent for PVNC. So she would come in and do school visits, and obviously she would come to her kids' classroom. And they would sit and they'd talk, and she'd see how inspired I was by the way he would teach. And she literally said, she'd go, I know. I knew you wanted to be a teacher, and the way you would look at that man is going to tell me how good of a teacher you are, because that should be your inspiration. People like that, if not me or your grandmother, should be who you want to be as a teacher, because he is one of the best humans I know. And that just validated for me that she even thought he was held to a higher standard than she was, which was crazy to me because I always kind of took her as this person that was very like, well, I want you to be like me and do all this stuff like me. Well, when I got my PhD, whatever. But in hindsight, looking back, she wasn't doing that to rub it in my face or make me feel like I'm lesser than. She was doing that to show me the potential of, here are the steps you could take, but also look at all the other phenomenal teachers around you, because if you really want to do this, those are the people that will shape you. And I can guarantee with everything that I have, to this day, I will say for a fact that that man is why I'm a teacher. That man is why this is the career choice that I have, and why it will never alter, because he made me feel seen when I wanted to drop off the face of this earth, to say it plainly. He was the person who, when I went through one of my very, very serious traumas, and it ended up going around my whole school because somebody who I trusted decided to use it as a point, well, I don't have any drama of my own, I might as well share somebody else's. He actually took me out of my class because he heard it before I did, took me out of my class, sat me down and said, this is what's going around, sit in my class, and we're going to figure out how to deal with it. And this was his only prep time for the whole day. He sat me there, called my aunt, because obviously it's my mom's sister and they've known each other forever, called my aunt, put her on the phone, because my aunt is someone I'm closer to than my mom when it comes to sensitive subjects, because she's 12 years younger than my mom, and called my aunt, sat with her. He sat with me the whole time and just listened to the conversation, then got on the phone with her himself and just discussed what he could do to help in any way, shape, or form. Most teachers don't do that. I can tell you for free, and I'm sure many other people have this same experience. Most teachers won't do that. And it seems like a no-brainer, which I want it to be a no-brainer for my students to be able to come to me and just go, I'm feeling really shitty today. I don't feel like I have a place on this earth. I need help. And not just going, well, I can call your parents. No, I'm going to sit there with you, help you figure it out, and your steps are the steps we take together for whatever I can bring you towards. That is what he did. That is what I want to do. And that is why I'm going to become a teacher. Because little humans are human. They're people. And especially because I want to work with spec ed humans, they're the coolest people that have so much to teach you, and yet most people don't even treat them like a person. Which could get me very emotional right now because it frustrates the bejesus out of me, but every person deserves to feel seen for what the potential they have to offer is. And he was the person that made me feel that way, and that is forever how I want to leave my legacy as a teacher, because he damn sure did that. He did that. And I can bet you money at his retirement party, there will be kids from the first year he was teaching filling whatever venue they can get big enough to get all of us out there, because we're all coming. Guaranteed. Guaranteed. Thank you.